Hello and welcome to Make 100 Games. This is video number 4 in my series about building a cartoony Mario Kart-esque kart racer. In the last video, we added some polish to our track by adding sandy grooves that follow the road, as well as tire treads and a checkered starting line. Now it's time to put the finishing touches on our environment. In this video, we will be adding some fences around the track so that the player can't leave the track. We will also add a few decorative trees and some grass. Okay, let's dive in. Let's start by adding some fences around our track. So we want fences to basically run along the outside of our track here and along the inside so that we can't cut across the hill or just decide to leave the race altogether. So to add fences, I actually use an asset, and I will list the asset in the description. And the asset that I use is a free asset called Fence Layout Tool. So I'm going to go ahead and import this into the project. Okay, once imported, what we're gonna do is we're gonna first create a new empty game object. We'll start by doing the outer fence first. So let's just call this outer fence. We're gonna add fence layout as a component. We're going to make a few corrections here. For the Z, we're just going to hit and enter 1.11, and the length we're going to do 2.5. These values make sure that the fence post and the connecting pieces are the correct length. So let's go and check the fence layouts assets because it does come with a nice little rural looking fence that we're going to go ahead and use. So the content is inside this polypie fence layout package, and if we go in here, in the example folder, we actually see a couple of issues here. Yeah, this is using not URP, but the standard rendering pipeline. So we're just going to go ahead and change the materials to use the universal render pipeline. So let's go here and check the green material and also choose a lit material. Go ahead and check this wooden material and do the same. Okay, we're now going to go into the wooden material and we're going to drag wood into the base map. And now it's looking better. The fence is starting to look like a fence. We're going to select our outer fence. We're going to drag the fence post here into end post prefab and the fence into the fence. So the way this works is that with our outer fence selected, we can just control click. So I don't know if you can see this so well, but there is like there should be a small red dot that appears, and that's basically the point where my fence will spawn. So I'm just going to go ahead and click around the outside of the track, and that's where my fence will spawn. So again, with this selected, we're going to click here, hold down control, and just click. So on Mac, this is a bit of an unfortunate hotkey because hitting control while you click brings up the context menu. But it works. You just have to angle your viewer so that the next part of the fence is on the left of the context menu. So we're just going to go and click our way around the track. You can already see the fence spawning. If you run out of zoom, just hit F twice. This should reset the zoom. And once we get close to the beginning, we can actually go here and hit complete loop. That should close our fence, and we can take a look at it here. Let's select our player. And if we check the game view, looking pretty good. So we're going to do the same for the inner fence here. We're just going to be placing it around. We're going to do the game object here, call it inner fence. Add the fence layout, change to 1.11 and 2.5. Assign the end as well as the other part. Select the inner fence and control click our way around the inner part of the track here. And once we are close, we can complete the loop. Let's give this a go. And we can see we can also collide with the fence, which is exactly what we want. Let's just drive around here real quick to make sure everything is up to snuff. Yes, looking very nice. All right, so the next thing we're gonna want to do is we're gonna want to add a couple of trees, just some nice decorative trees to make the environment look a bit more full. So the way I'm gonna do this, I'm just gonna go here, just somewhere here, just to see the tree more easily. We're just gonna go ahead and add a very basic, primitive idea of what our tree could look like. So we're gonna go here into 3D objects, select the cylinder. This will be our tree trunk. Go ahead and create another 3D object, this time a sphere. Bring that up here. And let's create a new folder for our prefabs. Drag the sphere inside it and actually just call it something like leaf ball. We can get rid of this here now. We're going to create an empty object, call it leaves, and we're gonna go ahead and add a script to this object here that will spawn a bunch of these leaf balls in a spherical shape. So if you look at our reference image, look, I'm trying to kind of go for you here are these trees here in the back. Yeah, so a simple cylindrical trunk and a big kind of spherical top, but I'm not gonna actually just make one big sphere. I'm going to basically make a collection of spheres in a big spherical shape. So let's go ahead and add this script to this object that will spawn these leaf balls. As with all the other scripts, I'll provide the script or a link to it in the description. Let's go to our scripts folder. Actually, let's just go here and add, let's call it tree crown spawner. Open it up in Visual Studio Code and paste in the asset here. So with the script attached, we can now assign a prefab for the leaves, or for these leaf balls, which is going to be our prefab here. So the way this spawner is going to work is we can assign our prefab here just like we did, and we can specify how many balls it should spawn and what the radii of them should be. Now, before this will work, I have to add one additional script. I will also provide this in the description, and this script will add an action to spawn the balls to our editor. So we're going to go back into our scripts folder, and we're going to create a new script and call it tree crown spawner editor. Open it up and paste the content inside. And now with this, we have this button to spawn the balls. So let's go ahead and try this. So we see here it spawned a few balls, definitely way too few. Let's bring this up a bit, and the size is all off. So we're gonna bring this to more like 0.5. We're gonna have to play around with this bit, 0.8 maybe, and we're gonna do like 50 of them. And we're gonna make sure to delete these balls. And let's try this. Looking a little better. So we don't really want this hole here, but we're getting somewhere. So let's try this one more time. Actually, before we do this, let's adjust the parameters. So we don't want the spawn distance to be quite as high. Let's try it with 1 and delete them again. Try one more time. That's looking a lot better. So let's go ahead and actually make our tree. So this is just kind of a prototype of it to give you an idea of what it will look like. So first what we're going to do is we're going to make a nicer looking trunk. So let's head into Blender. Let's go ahead and add a cylinder. We're just going to grab or stretch the cylinder ever so slightly. Something like this. We're going to scale the bottom a little bit here. Maybe grab a little more. Scale it in a little more. Something like this. And let's go ahead and add a couple of roots here. So we're going to extrude this a little bit, scale it, extrude again, scale some more, extrude again, scale some more, something like this. And we're just going to pull out individual piece a little bit, maybe scale them a little bit and pull out a piece here just to create some unevenness here. Pull it like this. It's not super important that this looks great because a lot of this stuff won't really be visible, but nevertheless, we do kind of want to have a bit of variation here. Okay, so we have a basic tree trunk. Let's now cut up the mesh a little bit so that we can also paint it. Okay, let's bring up the UV editor, select it all, and unwrap. The top and the bottom we don't really care about. We're not even going to see this part, so we just move it out of here entirely. We don't need that in our texture space. We're going to scale this down a little bit here, and we're going to export a UV layout. Next, we're going to, just to give this thing a bit more depth, we're going to create a ambient occlusion map. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here to the material section here and create a material. We're going to switch over to the shader editor. We're going to add an image, call it AO, hit OK, and we're going to return to the UV editor. Here in the rendering settings, we're going to switch to cycles. We're going to go down to bake, and we're going to select ambient occlusion, and we're going to bake to the texture, and let's just give this a go. Okay, it's very subtle, but we have a few context shadows here, and we're going to save this image as well. This will be our tree trunk ambient occlusion. Let's go and close this, and we're going to rename this to trunk. We're going to export this into an FBX. We're just going to select mesh here. We don't really want anything else. We want to apply to transform, apply to modifiers. We do not care about an animation. We also don't really care about this. And let's export it. And now let's go into Krita and let's paint this tree trunk. Now, when we created the UV layout, we exported it to be 1024 by 1024. And let's go ahead and drag in our AO map and our UV layout into the Krita file. Let's go ahead and make this thing an overlay. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add a little bit of a noise texture here, very subtle. Something like this, just to create kind of like a simple, subtle gradient effect. And let's give this a color. Nice, kind of brown. Yeah, it already looks a bit like wood here, and we see these contact shadows. Let's also give it a bit of a wood texture, so we're going to add another fill layer. Select pattern here, and here in Krita there actually is a wood texture. We're going to take this one, and we're going to give it a color as well. See what that will look like, and also go for kind of like a brown. And we're going to just reduce the opacity of this a bit. Something like this. This could look quite nice. So let's go ahead and save this and export it. Okay, so that's the tree trunk. Now let's create a texture for the leaf balls. So we're going to, again, we'll stick with 1024 by 1024. Probably it could be smaller, but it's fine. And for the leaf balls, we're just going to kind of do an abstract kind of leaf pattern kind of thing. So let's select our brush here and check here. There should be some sort of leaf pattern here. Stamp leaves. Let's increase the brush size. Actually, also do it here. Bigger. Let's give it a bit of a different color here. We're going to go with, of course, some shade of green. We can make it bigger still. That's pretty good. So let's stamp some leaves here. Let's make a new layer. Stamp some leaves here. Make another layer. Stamp a few leaves here. Make one more layer here. And there, and maybe one final one. Just kind of fill this out a little bit here. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're just going to give these different layers different colors or different shades of green. Get this one kind of like a color like this. Give this one here different shade of green. Maybe a bit more of a bland one here like that. Get this one a bit of a brighter one, but also a bit flat. Give this one maybe a bright green. Okay, and let's give the background a color as well. We're just going to create another fill layer. It's easiest. I think that's pretty good. So let's save this as well. Call this tree, leaves, export it. Okay, with this, it's time to return to Unity. Head over to our textures and drag in these new textures as a starting point here. So let's add our tree leaves. Let's add our tree trunk. And let's also create another folder here and call it meshes or models. Find our tree trunk model. Take the FBX. And actually, let me head back to Blender real quick. And let me just change the shading from flat shaded to smooth. And export this again. Drag it back in here. looking better. So let's just get rid of this here. We're going to drag the cylinder in. Let's go ahead and get rid of the decal there. Okay. And what I want to do, so what we could do is we could, of course, just create a material with the texture of the tree trunk and apply it. We can actually just do that to start with. Let's go ahead and create a material and call it tree trunk. Go and take our texture and apply it. We definitely don't really need a normal map for this, especially for a background object. Let's go ahead and take a material and apply it. And of course the top is black because we didn't UV map this. Maybe the tree trunk's almost a bit too bright, but the thing about it is let me actually first get the tree ball going as well. So let's head over to our prefabs here. First, let me create a material called tree ball. I don't really know what to call this. Add this in onto it and go to our prefabs. Double click our prefab and assign the material to it. And we can now spawn our leaves. Let me see here and spawn. So that's what that would look like if we put our trunk underneath here and resize it. I mean, we can also just make this a little bigger. It seems a bit small because the tree trunk actually seems pretty all right. I think that's good here. We can take this and we can move it up a little bit here. Get rid of this cylinder. We don't need that anymore. Take our tree trunk, move it below. And we can scale our tree trunk a little bit just to get the proportions right. Move the leaves down. So this can be a tree. This is what our trees can look like, but as you can see, it's very bland. Yeah, like let me also get rid of let me make sure that the blending here, or let me make sure that the decal doesn't show up on the leaves here, because you can see the tire treads on the leaves, and we definitely don't want that. So we're going to go to our prefab here, go in here and just make sure that it is only on this layer here. And we will have to respawn these balls in order for the prefab changes to take effect. And that looks better. It's not great that there's a gap here, but it still doesn't look very nice, right? It looks kind of meh. So I'm a huge fan of Fresnel, as you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a shader that will apply a Fresnel effect to the tree as well. And that will hopefully look a lot better. So let's go ahead and go and create a custom shader for this. So we're going to go to shader graph, URP, lit shader. We're going to call this one Fresnel. We're going to head in here and make a bit of room here. So we're going to first create a color, call it just color, and then we'll create a second color, call it Fresnel color. Create a property called power. We're going to add a Fresnel node. We're going to go ahead and wire the power up with this one. And the power, the default value should be 1. We're going to take a color here. Let's also give this one a default value of whatever we want to have for a tree here. Some nice saturated green. We're going to go ahead and let's try with multiplication. Actually, I want the middle to be the dark green, so let's try it with addition. Add this here. That's better. And the Fresnel color, let's make it a nice yellow. Very yellow, yellow. We're going to go ahead and pull that in, and we're going to multiply it with this one. This will give the edge of the Fresnel the yellow and the center the green color. Let's move all of it over here. In fact, let's group it. Called Fresnel. So I still would like to be able to sample a texture. So what we're going to do, we're going to add a texture 2D. As a default, we can even provide the leaves. There it is. So let's bring that in, add a sample texture 2D node here, bring in the texture, and we're going to, let's try it with, it's always a bit of trial and error with me with these shader graphs sometimes, so let's try and multiply and see what turns out here. If we multiply these two things, if that's what I want, no, that's not strong enough, so let's try, or let me at least try add here. Oh yeah, that's it. That's a little intense, but it's basically doing what I want it to do. So we can play with the values afterwards to try and tune it to our liking. And we're going to feed this into the color here. And yeah, we can change the color here, make it maybe a little darker. This can also be done in the material later on. But this is looking pretty good, so we're going to save this. We're going to go back to our render, or to our rendering folder here. To our shader folder. We're going to select our Fresnel shader, and we're going to create a material from it. We will call it tree leaves. And this material will use our Fresnel shader, so we're going to go ahead and go back to the materials and drag it over there. Let's go to our prefab, go into our tree ball here, and we're going to add the new material to it. So definitely a lot more vibrant. If we now return to our scene, we will have to respawn all of these leaf balls. And it definitely looks a little more interesting. Maybe a little intense for some people's taste, maybe even a bit intense for myself, but fine for now. I want to do the same for our tree trunk. So what we're going to do there is we're going to reuse the same shader to make another material for the tree trunk. So let's just take this one, copy and paste it. We're going to get rid of this one here, tree trunk, and we're going to give it the other texture. And we can change the colors here. So we're not going to do green. We're going to go to a nice dark brown. And that's all right for now. Let's just go ahead and assign this. Oh, wait, it's still way too bright. So let me just play around with these values here a little bit. It could be that the texture is just way too bright. So let me head back to Krita and just darken this whole thing a little bit here. Replace it in Unity. Okay, it's definitely darker. I don't like the green glow, so let's head back here to the material. The green glow is, or a yellow glow in this case, is definitely not what we want. We can just play around with this. Yeah, we want less glow here, so let's just darken this a little bit. Okay, and that's a decent enough tree. Let me reduce the intensity of the, or increase the power of it. Yeah, so if we decrease it, it's way too saturated. We can increase a little bit. And looking better for sure. I think that's pretty all right. So that's a pretty decent tree. I'm going to go ahead and create a parent object and just call it tree. We're going to take everything in here and pull it in there. We're going to make a prefab out of this, and that's our tree. So we're going to now place a couple of these trees around their scene. Again, there's probably a lot of different ways to make these trees, most likely better, more performant ways to make these trees. One downside of this tree prefab here is that you can't really use this with a terrain editor's tree placing function because it's a object made up of a bunch of different objects. There's like a whole hierarchy in there. And as far as I know, this will not work with the terrain's tree placing ability, which means you will also not be able to have trees at different levels of detail. But for a scene this small, I'm totally okay with this. And this way my tree looks kind of nice. Also, there's a good amount of geometry here in these leaves. I've not noticed any performance issues thus far yet, but it could be, of course, that this is not the most performant approach. But for now, for me, this has worked. So I will stick with it, and I do like the way it looks. So I'm just going to place these trees here in between the hills. I found that it looks nicest when they're kind of in these valleys. So we're going to place a handful of these trees, not a ton. So it's also okay if we can't paint them on there using the terrain editor's tools. And I also don't expect there to be a lot of issues performance-wise on most devices. But of course, if there are better ways to do this, feel free to share what you know in the comments. I'm always eager to learn. Okay, so we got a couple trees here, so that's looking pretty good. But one more thing I want to do is I want to add patches of grass around the trees to kind of conceal these roots a bit. So all that hard work we did in making these roots come out, we're going to conceal in the end anyway. But yeah, let's go ahead and create a new file. We'll make this one a bit smaller. 512 by 512 should be enough. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our brush tool here, and we're going to choose this grass stamp. And let's also, again, increase the size and just paint a little or stamp some grass here. Something like this. And we're going to go ahead and give this a layer style. We're going to give it a gradient overlay. We're going to choose a gradient that's kind of like a nice bit of green here. Let's reduce the scale and also maybe make it normal. Okay, so let's just flip that over just to kind of have, yeah, something like this. Yeah, like a nice blend of dark green or gradient from dark green to light green. Let's get rid of the background. Let's call this something like grass stamp. Export to PNG. Make sure that we store the alpha channel. And let's go back to Unity. Find our grass stamp. We're going to bring that in. We're going to go here and make sure that we select alpha as transparency. Hit apply. And now it should look like this. Now with this, we're going to go to our terrain. Let's bring this out a little bit again. So we're going to go here to edit details. We're going to add a grass texture. And here we're going to drag our texture into it and click add. And now we can add grass. So this is way too much. We're going to reduce the size of this brush just to kind of be around the tree. And let's increase the opacity so that we have as much grass as possible around the tree. And we're just around the trees where the tree is rooted. We're going to add these patches of grass just to add a little bit more life into our scene here, a little more detail. But let's give this a go. So let's drive here for a minute. So one thing you can see is the grass fades in quite late. You can actually also see this here. So I do want the grass to be kind of visible from afar. I mean, again, this is not a huge scene. We're not doing a ton of rendering here to be optimizing this heavily. So we're going to go into the terrain. I believe it is in the settings here. And we're going to increase the detail distance. So you can see as I increase this, we're not going to go all the way here. Yeah, but like, I don't know, something like this here. Let's give this one a go. It's okay if it fades in as long as I don't notice it too much. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. All right, so there we have it. We have a cartoony rural track surrounded by rolling hills, fences, and some nice cartoony trees. Now that our environment is all set up, it's time to turn our attention to the AI. So in next week's video, we will train an AI opponent to race on our track. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and come back next week. Thanks for watching and see you soon.